Embrace HIPMAT. Embrace its academic and professional reputation that has trained over 15,000 professionals in 10 years. Embrace HIPMAT's numerous professional programs from HND to BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and the School of Transport and Logistics. Embrace HIPMAT's professionalism, excellence, and consistency with solid mentorship from the University of Bamenda and the University of Boya. Embrace HIPMAT's skills, development, expertise, and career orientation via workshops and academic field trips. Be part of the HIPMAT family. Visit our Boya campus at Checkpoint Moliko and Douala campus at Carrefour Yoro, Jos, Bonamusani. Contact 683-70-1720. The Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.
Good evening, televiewers. You're welcome to Prime. We are the first edition for the week and are going to be looking at two key topics today regarding the position of the Prime Minister of Cameroon. We are going to start with the COVID gate that is rocking Cameroon. We are going to be asking whether the Prime Minister should be held accountable for the mismanagement of the funds. Should he be scapegoated following many calls by Cameroonians for his resignation? And we also are going to be looking at the position of the Prime Minister as held by an Anglophone. Is he truly the head of government? We are discussing this with panelists who are seated already with us. Two of them are here with us. Dr. Nick Ngwanyam is a seasoned educationist. He is a politician and a social entrepreneur. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you very much. We are dealing with some very sensitive issues tonight, and we hope that we will just be able to talk about principles so that we learn from the mistakes and the experiences of others, so that we can build a better nation. The questions about the Prime Minister, they are yes or no answers, and we'll be looking at that and trying to see what is working for him and what's not working for him.
Faevis Tayon is here with us. We're glad to have you.
Thanks very much, Leonard. It's my pleasure coming here today and speaking things to equally Dr. Nick, who is present with us here today. Well, if we look at it, I think we'll be sending greetings first to the people of Bunoku Village as usual. We cannot always leave that out. Dr. Fomoki Waters, my Royal Majesty, and also other Royal Majesties from Kukum Village in Batibo, Wunenberg, our fond of Wunenberg, and the one of Berry Village, and not forgetting our fond of Baba One. We also have this. Anyway, it's probably a privilege for me always being closer to royal men and people of royal family. So I think we'll be glad. And but the main issues are at stake, and we think that we'll be trying to put in place our small and modest contributions to get things straight.
Okay, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, can you understand the so much talked about the Prime Minister and his resignation and all these calls? Why?
And the responsibilities were put in his hand to solve the problem. And if he didn't have the skills and the opportunity to solve the problems, and there was a wastage, then he has some questions to answer whether he took the penny or not. The issue is not whether he took the penny. The issue is that responsibilities were given to him, and those responsibilities were mismanaged, and Cameroonians bottom line. And it's very easy to understand where this came from. We are not saying that he stole or he didn't steal, because he knows best whether he took a penny or not. That's got nothing to do with us, and there are people who are charged with looking at that. But we are looking at his position as the Prime Minister and head of government. Whether he has power or not, I don't care about that, because you are the Prime Minister and you are given a responsibility, and you spoke to the nation, and the nation listened to you, and they were following your instructions. If you didn't do your homework, that's your cup of tea.
But this has to do with the management of COVID funds.
Yeah, when we talk management of COVID funds, it's management of the whole package, it's management of everything, and the funds were there to oil the machinery. So the question is, why didn't it work out well? Problems we are having here, if you look closely, there are problems that have to do with respect for truth. If you have the capacity to respect the truth and work based on principles, it doesn't matter how difficult the problem is, you will solve it. But of course, you are not called upon to solve all problems. But if in the course of solving the problem, it's very difficult, then you would ask for some people to give you ideas how best to solve the problem. And if you come and tell people, this is too difficult for me, I can't solve it, there's nothing wrong in it to just tell people, I can't handle it. But if you can't handle it and then you let things drift away and there's this chaos, then you've got some questions to answer.
Okay, you got some questions to answer. How do you understand this far as tying that question and asking for the resignation of the Prime Minister because of what is happening? What could be the intention? Is it love of country? Is it patriotism?
Well, if some persons are talking about resignation of PM, it would be for two reasons. The first one would be for the love of the country, because they have not been able to x-ray their minds to find exactly why for PM to resign. But on the other hand, it could equally be for an aspect of what we call political reasons, where probably they want to take advantage of so that he should step down, and probably for them to see some other person to come on board. When you are a leader, you have people for you and people who are against you. And for people who are against you, there are some who might be against you for reasons best known to them, and there are others who might want things to be right, and so they have a joining course they take to talk about your resignation. But generally, I look at it is that we first of all have a problem in the country. Especially in Africa, I think the culture of resignation. If you look at it, I would let you know that if you come to the resistance movement, for example, we understand that at the point in time, come to suspended his duties and had to go out of the service. Now, we equally had another official, Aji, who equally resigned. The only two cases of resignation I have seen in the country. It tells you now that it's okay, we will not want to continue taking it. Now, we're supposed to have that question because if we have to talk about the Prime Minister and COVID-gate, I've been very close to the scenario and I saw that many things were wrong as far as the COVID. Under normal condition, even if before people are asking for the resignation of the PM, I was still thinking that the PM would have done a lot of good by resigning, because when you have a responsibility, it gets to a point where probably things is not due to managerial errors. At a point in time, it will be dignifying. If you get one time say, okay, I'm sorry, probably I cannot keep up to this because I feel that I'm letting the people down, I think it will be more dignifying. So if people call on the PM for reasons they know, as I said, others are political, for others is also of the nation, I think that it will be normal because we're talking in a situation whereby we have freedom of expression. People have the right to tell you whether you are doing well or you're not doing well. But then we have the issue of what we call political accountability. Political accountability, it tells you that it is the duty of the state to let people know how affairs of the country is being run. When it started, we had trust of $1 billion that was given by the head of state. And then other companies, well-renowned companies in the country, equally chipped in. That first part of the budget, nobody, I repeat, nobody has taken the pain to explain to Carolina that out of the $1 billion the head of state gave, out of this money that this company gave, this is how we have gone as far as its usage is concerned. And so at the end of it, if we come down to a situation whereby IMF is forcing things to be brought to the limelight, I think that's but normal. Because I don't know how you explain to me that instruction leaves the presidency, it bypasses the PM, it goes to the director of finance and the minister of public health, instructing him to pay Medicine Carbon SA and a host of other companies amount of budget allocation. Now you start asking yourself, but where is the case of the position of the PM, where all these things bypass and they pass in front of him? And again, I think that when we look at this situation, those who say the PM should resign, they could equally have another point in time, because as I said, if you are a leader, you must be able to accept responsibilities when you fail. Just like the head of state, President Probia, should be able to accept responsibility that he has failed Cameroonians in giving them what it takes for them to live up to standard, and also the quagmire we find ourselves. But when we live in a situation whereby we shift blames, and give to other persons, we are not doing justice to ourselves. Come to think of it, that if we talk about the COVID gate, people talk about the PM to resign and all the like.
The question now is, if you are a prime minister, you are in charge of the government. Now, if things go wrong around you and you don't signal, if we are before the law court, they charge you as being accomplice to the whole issue. Because if Leo is the director of Media Prime, and you have staffs who are doing things contrary, and you don't put them to order, or you don't signal, because I'm sure it's written, I've called this person to order, so that when it's getting hot, you just remove your document and brandish. These are the steps I took. But now, if we look at the PM, I did not see him addressing the situation of probably some companies coming in and taking, or asking, why is it that this test kit that's supposed to cost 7,054 francs is now instead costing 17,500. These are the questions he was supposed to have asked along. And at a point in time, we're expecting that at the time that this issue were unfolding, the PM was supposed to have hit the table. You called for a cabinet meeting and you asked the Minister of Scientific and Technical Research that why is this thing like that, this thing like that. But if you wait first for findings to be brought in before we start talking about whether we are going or we are coming down, I think, Mr. Leo, it is a big managerial error. And as I said, in democratic countries, when you falter in these kind of things, you resign.
Yeah, but you see democratic country, Cameroon is an advanced democracy.
No, not advanced. Cameroon is still far from that democracy.
Yes,
Cameroon is a kangaroo system.
Do you understand the motives and the possible sources of this cause? Isn't it also a cabal that is wanting to pull the legs of the Prime Minister? How do we understand in a country where hardly have we seen a move wanting a minister to stand down because of the crisis, and yet today we are calling on the Prime Minister to step up? Thank you very much, Leo.
Greetings to Dr. Nick and Fatayong. I think it is the right of every Cameroonian to speak out for the progress of this nation. You see, if there's a cabal, like you put, and the cabal thinks that the Prime Minister is not working well, or he has some funny skeletons, I mean, it is their right to come out and say, okay, he should resign. A cabal can be right when you are wrong. So there's no gainsaying. If they have to come to the fore to say, okay, resign, then go now on your scale and check what is going out wrong. But I really think that the issue of the Prime Minister resigning, as far as the accusations of this COVID-19 fund is concerned, Fatayong rightly puts it, it's about accountability. And when you have a position of responsibility and you are not able to account for it, it is very but normal that people should call for your resignation. So, but again, when you look at the Cameroonian system of administration, the way the position of the Prime Minister, the way the Prime Minister comes to power in Cameroon, you understand that it is very difficult for him to walk on his own path, a sole path, without the attachment of other forces, which, of course, are going to put him as a scapegoat. Former Prime Minister Inoni Ephraim had a similar situation of a scapegoat. Sometimes not because he decided to spend the money alone or to mismanage alone, but when you have a position of responsibility, you can equally hit the table, because the Constitution, we know that the Constitution gives the Prime Minister the latitude to express power. You know, he can make Omar, it's option. If he leaves the presidency of the republic and the secretary generals over there to maneuver over his position, it is left for him. So people see you who is at that position. They don't look at the forces that are behind, pulling the strings and ensuring that they don't execute. So I think that so far money has been mismanaged. The person who is responsible is the Prime Minister. Cameroonians think that he should be accountable for. People have been resigning in other parts of the world. We've seen people resign in other countries. Okay. If he is not accountable for the money with his ministers, he should resign as well.
Yeah, but as we speak, things have been taken back to the presidency, as we all know. Yes, but why is it particular with PM? Why is it particular with this PM? We have seen different previous PMs. We did not see this mobilization for him to be scapegoated. We have known that previous prime ministers have also had scandals. We have known, yes, but what is particular with him now?
All right, thanks. This is it. What makes a person great? What is it that makes a person great? You see, Leo, let's say if I were the president now, because I know you and I know Jude, I could make you the prime minister and make Jude whatever, and this kangaroo man whatever I want because I have the power. But I confer power on you, which is limited to a certain extent. But when I'm putting you in a position, it's because I want you to be able to solve problems. I'm not putting you there so you should be praising me. That's just the bottom line. I'm not putting you there to become a choir. I'm not putting you there to be prostrating when I'm passing. No, I'm putting you there to address the problems of the people. Because when you solve the problems of the people effectively, then that protects me as the president, and that makes the government strong, and that makes the nation strong. But you see, you put in place people who don't have that capacity to solve problems, people who don't have the courage nor the wisdom to be able to face the truth. And this is it. The other prime ministers were lucky to get away because there were really no crisis. There were problems in the nation, but little things, but no crisis. And you see, Chidi was one of the greatest prime ministers amongst this lot. Not that he was as good as we would have loved him to be, but when you take the whole lot of them, 5, 6 of them, he stands out in the sense that he came in when there were crises, and he had the emotional intelligence to be able to articulate with the people on the street and articulate with the powers that be, and even lie to you, looking at you, and then you would even give him a beer to drink, because he had this convincing thing. And but in his real nature, he is a people's kind of person. But we're dealing here with some people who lock themselves behind doors and are doing whatever and don't really communicate with people. So that is the difference. So now, the two major crises hit the nation under Dion Gute, and these major crises just demonstrate that he doesn't have the capacity to solve problems. That's all. So you
solve problem. We are talking about a COVID.
Wait, I'm
managing COVID.
Yes,
would you would you summarize the PM's stay in power with COVID-19 when you know that the presidency also has a very strong hand?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm trying to paint a picture here so that you understand.
Okay.
First of all, as a person, he comes. You know, when he was made the minister, he was I would say he was a junior minister taken from the bottom of the list and then brought, and then they put him in on top of Hawks. So he had to ascertain himself. He had to be assertive. And the only thing that can allow you to be assertive under those conditions is your character. Is your character and your capacity to stand by truth and be able to say, I will not continue, or I will not do it, or something like that if something was not right. Now, the other thing was, he had to have the capacity to be able to address problems as they are. If you lack these things, it doesn't matter how handsome you look, you're not going anywhere. So it would look like he didn't have these two qualities. But he had his first acid test. His first acid test was to solve the Anglophone problem. And he had this opportunity to do it with the putting in place of the major national dialogue. And if he had handled that major national dialogue very well and actually addressed the Anglophone problem as it was supposed to be, he would have come out of it stronger. But we all know that the major national dialogue turned out to be a fake arrangement, and that already puts him in a position of weakness. And because, why is it fake? It is only the truth that gives something strength and credibility. If it doesn't have that content of truth, you can whitewash it as much as you want. It still remains wishy-washy, and it doesn't do much. And when people get to realize that you're unable to stand on truth and that you're unable to really go for something that is big, they will take you for granted. And therefore, that's why you see the ministers taking for granted, everybody taking for granted. Then the COVID-19 comes, and then there's probably something in there for everybody, and nobody's afraid of him, nobody cares about him, and they do exactly what they want. So it's a failure of character.
Okay, failure of character. Is there also, can we also say that there is also proof of so much fighting happening out there in Yaoundé, people wanting to use opportunities to blackmail others, to present themselves to the big man as the as the people working for this nation?
If we talk about fighting, it's normal in any government or any administrative structure that you always have infighting. It's the nature of man that we must admit that sometimes you have that pulled you down syndrome, where somebody will be asking, but why is this man up like this? Can I not work out a way to bring this man down? It's natural with man. If you look at the sociological components of man and where man comes from, the backgrounds are different. Now, the main issue here is that if you have a clean hand, you wash your hands like Pontius Pilate, even when those wahalas are coming, it will not weigh down on you. Because if people make statements because they take advantage of your lukewarm nature of things, or the errors you have committed in terms of your management or the execution of your duties, the question we'll be asking is, even if the people want to pull you down, but what they are saying, is it true? Those are the things we should be asking ourselves. All right, if you say FAR has stolen, probably because you have a problem with FAR, but the bottom line is, did FAR steal? If FAR stole, then it means he has stolen. It will not be an aspect that somebody wants to weigh you down, because the question is, why did you steal? So, if we look at this scenario, you see, we have been saying this, and Yaoundé has been taking things for granted. If you look at it, look at the Cameroon Renaissance Movement members. We have more than 200 of them who have been detained. Now, what happens? Now, they tell you that they don't have presumption of innocence. But when it comes to government officials, now, Minister of Communication comes and gives you a communique. That no, we should not comment on it because they are working on presumption of innocence. You could imagine the application of two different laws, two different approaches in Cameroon where they say a crime has been committed. So I tell the Yaoundé regime and the cabal in question, if somebody goes out to march on a Pacific march and he is remanded in custody, and another person steals money that is intended to save lives, intended to save lives, who amongst these two is Lucifer of the first order? I begin to tell the people in Yaoundé and those who sing song for them that it is just a matter of time because the clock is ticking. Now, when we have managerial errors, as it is, as I said, if you are a prime minister, you could make it a little bit different from your own state, which means you maintain your dignity, which means you better call a shot and let things happen the way they want to happen. I think Dr. cited Achidi Achu. I think Achidi Achu was that kind of person who was not too bad in terms of managerial. It is true the context in which they operated differs, but you could see there was somebody who took time to explain to people what is transparent.
But seemingly, you people are doing, you people are summarizing the stay of the Prime Minister with COVID-19. We understand the difficulties with which COVID monies, funds were given to Cameroon. Yep. We understand the difficult environment under which the Prime Minister has been working. Are we saying that is it because of COVID-19? Monies that are stolen by different ministers, when we know that instructions were coming from the head of state, from the presidency, for monies to be dished out, and today we are wanting to nail the Prime Minister. Are we really fair? Mr. Leo, yes.
the bottom line is this. If you say the instruction was coming from the presidency, if you look at Medecins Cameroon SA, there is another time when the Prime Minister accorded markets to them in terms of the COVID issue. It's an official communique from the Prime Ministry. That is the first time people came to understand that Medecins Cameroon SA function is when there's a time that they protected themselves, and there was a Prime Ministerial order that was giving them part of that contract to supply. That's the first part of it, before this other saga comes up. So at the end of it, Mr. Leo, what we're saying here is that if you are on board and presidency has its role to play, the question is, what role have you been able to play to also denounce that? Imagine that even the Prime Minister is also accused by the Special Criminal Court or is under investigation, so to say. So it tells you that if he himself is equally, even just called for questioning, it means that all is not well in the land. And so the question we're asking now is it not better for him, probably, while the presidency is doing his own part, to have equally accompanied the presidency in making sure that people who came in, who were not due to take part in this issue. Now look at it, Mr. Leo, talk about other centers of COVID. There was a center that was on the Lembe, and some of the stadiums across the country. You understand when the thing started. Now, during this period, Prime Minister was in charge. It was not the presidency during this period. Now, presidency only came in during the second phase of the 180 billion. But at that initial stage, when the COVID started, 1 billion came from presidency, from the head of state. Okay. The other money came. Prime Minister was in charge to see how it functions. But on the other hand, he stayed him quiet. So if he stayed quiet, he should take responsibilities of not being able to carry on his job. Therefore, anybody who says he should resign, not only him, the entire regime should go on leave.
Okay.
It's a kangaroo regime.
Go on leave.
Yes.
Now, do we understand that monies were made available to different ministries? I'm sure the Prime Minister at this level, I don't know how much money was managed, but these monies were given out to the Ministry of Public Health. Ministry of Finance received money. It's massive. The Supreme Court also received money. And yes, but how do we want to put all of this on the head of the Prime Minister?
Yo, I like the way the Post newspaper puts the headline. It really puts in quote licensed unruly ministers.
Yes.
Meaning that these unruly ministers are actually licensed by who? If you have to underline that word, it's the key word, licensed by who? By the Prime Minister? If not, by who? Secondly, we've been talking here all along, and we are looking at the general perspective. But if you've been in Cameroon all along, like all of us here, you understand how the country runs. You know, the Prime Minister was appointed by the head of state, and in a very normal, sane setup, in a Republican setup, like Professor Ngolengola would say, in a Republican setup, in a presidential setup, a Prime Minister like John Gote is supposed to have been the one to appoint these guys who he may have distributed the COVID funds to. Meaning that you have had the powers now to check them. You understand? It's difficult for him now to do that job because there's no minister, John Gote, that will take some kind of rules from Prime Minister John Gote. It's been happening like that in this country. You appoint me on the same day, a Prime Minister, a lead minister, a minister that is supposed to have been the one to influence the appointment of the team that he will work with. The Presidency of the Republic sits back and appoints people who have their autonomous, who have their very fishy reasons getting into government. They get there, siphon funds, and at every juncture it goes back to fall on the head of the Prime Minister because he's the one at the head of. So we're looking at the general perspective to say that he's supposed to resign. But again, understanding Cameroon political landscape, you understand that the man's hands are tied. He is at the point where all these things are happening. Maybe he does not even know 1/4 of what is happening. You see, the real people who are chopping this money, these COVID funds, they are there. They are there from a particular kind of, a particular group, a bourgeoisie group, a particular tribe and order that has been chosen and put in some places to chop the money. So it's really unfortunate for him, but this is the law. When the law is applied, you cannot begin to say something has happened there or there. The Prime Minister should take full responsibility, like Far said earlier, full responsibility of if the ministers under him are thievery, he is the one going to take the blame. Again, the Prime Minister of the Republic was supposed to be the one to influence the appointment of those he's going to work with. That's how it is done in the normal parliamentary system. Unfortunately, we have an appointment, we have a dictatorial system where people just stand and appoint people anywhere. So I really don't think it's a personal business for John Gote. But the ball is in his court, the cap is on his head right now. He has to wear it.
Okay, yes, somebody is saying that broad people will come up against the Prime Minister. I'm not sure that was my objective. Professor Boyumu, I don't know whether we are coming up against, or the panelists are coming up against the Prime Minister. This one says, good evening. I'm a language Frida from Yaoundé. Please leave the Prime Minister alone. Was he the sole organizer of the National Dialogue? His hands were short, so please don't shift blames on him. Hope you understand. Okay, thank you very much. This one says, are you sure that your panelists can speak for the Southwesterner? Yes, that's also the problem. Hi, Leonard. I am John from Germany. Have you noticed that almost 99% of your panelists are always from the Northwest or Manu people? Where are the Southwest, Southwesterner? Mr. John, I do my possible best to get everybody on the panel here. Difficult to get many persons to come. I really wish they are here to talk. Hello, good evening to you all. In the studio, I'm Filippo in Bromenda. Is the Prime Minister truly the head of government in the true sense? If this question is answered in the affirmative, then it takes the blame for all poor management and this question of COVID funds. Yeah, let me take this one. This one says, good evening, sir. We are very disappointed with your panel today, which seems to be doing a public campaign against the Prime Minister. I'm embarrassed that your panel of today is not a debate, but a total campaign against the Prime Minister. This is unacceptable. Your panel has taken sides, okay? You see, this one claims to know too much, but knows nothing. I have followed him. Okay, this is bringing another problem. I think that some people, especially from the Southwest regions, they have the impression that it is a campaign against the Prime Minister.
Can I say something about it?
Yes.
Brothers and sisters, it's not about a campaign about anybody. In fact, you are the ones who have brought it to our attention that it's because it's a Southwesterner. No, he's the Prime Minister, and he's responsible for the things. It's simple. And I don't know what you're saying really, because if you had followed one of my write-ups sometimes when he just came to power, I mean, I wrote something that I put out to say that he has more steam than Prime Minister Philip Munyam. Yes. So it's not about that. It's about until we go out of this tribal thing and begin to look at. We are looking at our problems and the solutions.
We are taking a short break. When we come back, we look at the second topic.
Not where people are from.
Please, no, I want us to take a short break. When we come back, we take we take on the second topic, which still has to do with the Prime Minister. Welcome back. You're watching Prime Hour on Media Prime. This time around, we are going to be looking at the position of and on the phone as Prime Minister in Cameroon. Is he really head of government? According to the poster, we decided to discuss this today because we got inspired from the Post newspaper that suggests that the Prime Minister is being targeted to carry the cross for ministers who have stolen state funds, but I had no intention. Prime or Media Prime has no intention to wanting to do a campaign against the Prime Minister. But I will start with you again now. As head of government, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam, is the Prime Minister playing the role as head of government?
I'm sure of what. I'm so embarrassed. This is the problem. We as human beings, we don't like truth, and when you speak a truth, you become the enemy of people. We have this thing where you remember there was this video about Professor Lumumba. He was saying something about it's our own, you know, just our own kind of thing. So we don't really go for issues and values. We just protect people because they are our own. In fact, if it were Young there or any other person, we would say the same thing about him. And we have been saying it's not because of tribe. And the bottom line is what you should be looking at is what we are saying. Is it true or false? That's it. It's an issue of truth against what? Yes, it's an issue of truth. Now, this is what we were saying. If the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the Prime Minister really had power, he would have said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And if the probably would not have been where we are. And if he had actually exercised the power, probably would not be where we are. But the bottom line is, we see that, you know, the Anglophone prime ministers don't have power. Either they lack it because of their personalities, or is the system that doesn't give them power. God alone knows.
You know that, you see why I smile on this issue. All those who think that they can propagate hate speech is a waste of time. Mr. Leo, I am very disturbed in this program because
we cannot be talking on issues and facts on the ground. People take it and attach it to tribal lineage. When former PM Philemon Young was on board, I think I was amongst those who was at the forefront and totally picking up the errors of his tenure. So the issue of where you come from is not the issue, is not the problem here. The way I see people interpreting it down there, and that's what is killing this country. Because when we sit up to people about things, look at the intention. We have no intention here. People have taken us to another intention because they say it's like a calculated attempt to run down the PM. But I feel like you what Dr. Nick is saying. Are you for the facts? Because we are here to make things run the country to be right. We are here to build up things. Look at the facts we are saying and the way we are analyzing it. Does he have a problem? If he has a problem, the way we are approaching it, that's fine. But don't tell us it's because the PM is this, it's like want to run our PM, or it's because probably you are not seeing any parallels from the north or southwest. We are talking about facts here, the way I see it. Okay. So it's a very terrible approach if we continue to move on tribal lines, as some people have put it to be in this country.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. This campaign against the PM will not work. The Anglophone crisis started when Yang was PM. What did he do? Please try to select people who are objective in the analysis. Mulafako is writing from Limbe. Mulafako, good evening to you. That is not my intention, please. Greetings, Mr. Liu and the ladies. A corruption-free Cameroon will truly be an impossible situation because many unscrupulous people who have been used to embezzle state funds from the time that they were junior and top civil servants are appointed ministers because of blind immunity. Yes, but we are talking about the Prime Minister. You just landed, let me get to you. Yeah, quite difficult one for them. But why should the Prime Minister carry the cross for everybody?
The question which you asked, I've been asking myself, why should people put the cross on the Prime Minister? Because we understand that Chief Dr. Joseph Jongute has been one of the most active members of government as far as this Anglophone crisis is concerned, as far as COVID-19 is concerned. The issue is we are seeing that Chief Dr. Joseph Jongute, when he came in, especially within the advent of the Anglophone crisis, you realize that he was on the field and he went to Boya, he went to Bamenda, and at one point in time he told the people in Boya that the head of state is committed in dialoguing with the people. And he's the same thing, he came to Boya, he went to Bamenda and he did the same thing. So we see that proactiveness within him. And COVID-19 came. He was the first to talk about COVID-19 measures, and he addressed the nation on behalf of the president of the Republic, talking about COVID-19, and he has been firm as far as ensuring that COVID-19 should be eradicated in Cameroon, or we should curb COVID-19. And the aspect of whether he should take the blame or not, no, he should not take the blame, because if we look at Cameroon, the structured nature of Cameroon, the truth is that Cameroon, it has the most confused system where you feel like it's coming from up to down. At times it moves horizontal. So at this point, you have the president of the Secretary General, the president of the Republic, who manages controls other ministers. Sometimes you see documents come from the president of the Republic asking that certain ministers should do this, do that, do that. At that point in time, you ask yourself, what role there is the Prime Minister? I think what we should be clamoring for is that the Prime Minister should be given much power, such that when such a thing happens, then we can blame him, because at this level, remember that he does not have that the power at his level to manage this, to manage the ministers, to manage the crisis that we are talking about, especially the major national dialogue. Dr. Nick talked about the major national dialogue. The truth is, the Prime Minister did his best as far as he worked within the scope of his scope. His scope was limited, and so he worked with the scope. So you don't expect him to go above his scope. Whether we like it or not, people have what called
their rule and responsibility, and their rule and responsibility is given by their bosses. And if a boss recruits you and tells you that, hey, your duty is to do this, do that, we should evaluate him on the duty that was handed to him. The duties that were handed to him as far as COVID-19 is concerned is to ensure that the ministers do their tax and budget. Now the budget that was allocated, the Prime Minister did not have that full power over the budget. Look at what happened when the bags of rice came. The bags of rice did not come through the Prime Minister. But at the end of the day, you expect that the Prime Minister should come and answer for the bags of rice? No. At one point in time, you see what happened when the Anglophone crisis took a peak, when the Prime Minister was saying that the head of state has commissioned dialogue. Another minister was saying that no, there's no dialogue. Who should you blame at that level? A Prime Minister who is going down to talk about dialogue isn't the tension, and a minister who is pushing against a dialogue. At this point in time, I think that what we should clamor for is that the Prime Minister needs much power so that he can do what we are expecting him to do. Let's evaluate him on the scope.
Okay, let's evaluate him on the scope. Somebody is writing here that thanks Mr. Liu, my media prime is a pace setter in our media landscape. Can you see the PM is functionally at the head, but particularly he's not. He should be left alone. Another person is writing that was it the Prime Minister who gave instructions for buckets and soap to be distributed to people? Why not call the names of those who have stolen the money? Why are you people looking? What are you people looking for behind the Prime Minister? Yeah, but why is it that? That's the question I've asked myself. That many persons, we know how Cameroon functions. Persons have siphoned money, and nobody is asking for the resignation of these ministers. And people, is the Prime Minister a soft target for many people?
Leo, I think that when we gather here, the very essence of the media like this is for us to ascertain basic truth, basic societal truth. We're not doing this because I've been a media professional for over close to a decade, and what I do as a professional journalist is present facts to public to judge. Sometimes it's really difficult when you work with a population that is emotional. I worked in Bamenda, in the bastion of former Prime Minister Young Philemon. There, I remember those days, every other day, the newspapers will have headlines on Young Philemon, especially concerning the ring road that was never done. Young Philemon, the most dormant and docile Prime Minister Cameroon has ever had. You understand? You know, when you occupy a public office as that of a Prime Minister of a country, it is very delicate, especially when the nationals are going through some perilous moments like this which we are facing. So it's not. Let's wash away that concept of campaign or whatever. I don't think someone is here for that. We are looking at issues. We are looking at issues that are affecting the nation, and hoping that things like Jerry said, like hoping that we give priority to where it is necessary. As I said this earlier to you, that for those who do not understand the Cameroonian political landscape, they'll think that the Prime Minister is a whole trouble, but he has to bear it because he is the head of that government. What else do you do? If you are the leader, the only thing you can do is accept responsibility, no matter how bad. But those unruly government ministers who embezzle this money, who are in Kondengi, it is not John Gute who sends them to Kondengi. So who is appointing these people? Who is giving them that power? Because I understand that in the normal setup, in the prime ministerial setup, we're supposed to have a prime minister appointed, then he in turn, where people in some places they elect prime ministers in parliament. That is to give him some power that he can control. Because what we're lacking in Cameroon is pure true governance system, which deals mostly with accountability. We are talking about an accountability issue here. Is a prime minister having that power which he can control the junior ministers? That is that's the crux of the issue. You understand? So he is only bearing, he is the scapegoat, like I said earlier. He is the scapegoat of the entire system. All the successive prime ministers have been through the same system. But we are clamoring that there could be a change, there could be a better way for our prime ministers to function. Give him the power to appoint his people, so that when he is resigning, he resigns alongside his whole crew. If today you are saying that John Gute should resign and maybe Minister Manauda is there, and Manauda is indicted in the same COVID gate. So what difference does it really make? So at the end of the day, I'm saying that as the Prime Minister, he was supposed to have been, we have a very mixed governance system, which is not aimed at giving Cameroonians the best. It is aimed at manipulating and ensuring that people get to blame people for nothing. We have a Prime Minister who is there in jail. Who's in jail? A Prime Minister should not be in jail. We have a Prime Minister who is there in jail. The person who appointed him and the people who have been chopping the real money, they are out there loitering. So we need to reorganize the setup, the governance setup of the country. Do we have somebody who can really sit in the shoes of the president of this country? The Prime Minister is not able, because the Prime Minister, whoever the Prime Minister is, I'm not talking because whether it's John Gute, it's Young Philemon, it's Noni Ephraim, it's Achidachu, none of them have been able to sit because they are appointed and given limited powers. So can we get to an era where these Prime Ministers are voted in Parliament, then go back and have to form their own working, their own group to work with, so that the day the Prime Minister is resigning, he goes with his whole crew, and we know that this group is bad. But for now, what is happening, like I said, we have mixed up the entire governance system of Cameroon with the presidential and the parliamentary system. We have jumboxed everything in such a way that people get confused, and we are happy that we are solving the issues. We are not solving the issues.
We are not solving the issues. Dr. Nick Nguanyang, what powers does the PM wield in Cameroon over some of these ministers? Because that is where the problem actually comes from. You blame him for not doing something when we know how things function.
There are two types of power that you've got to understand to know what is happening. Like I said, someone appoints you and he gives you power through appointment. That's fine. But you must also have your own power that is dependent on your character and your capacity to solve problems. And so when you have that strength of character and the ability to face problems, then you add the appointed this appointed power to it. Then you become strong, and you can vibrate at your own frequency, and you go into the battlefield fighting problems, and you couldn't care whether you'll be dismissed or not. You don't seek to last there forever. You go there with the intention of genuinely solving problems, and you cannot genuinely solve problems if you don't face the truth in love. But if you don't have that strength of character, and if you don't have the capacity to solve problems, and you are only depending on what was given you as an appointment, that can be very challenging, especially in the face of problems and in the face of challenges coming from junior ministers. So that's where the problem lies. And probably I should remind people again what His Eminence Christian Cardinal Tumi taught us about success in anything that you do in life. Number one, that you must like work. Number two, that you must like work that is well done. To like work that is well done means there's that accountability. Number three, you must have intellectual honesty. Number four, you must have self-discipline, and you must pray. Prayer here means that you must depend on God. If you don't depend on God, you're going to fail sooner than later, and you must respect the environment. And life is about the other person. It's just unfortunate if we keep on being so emotional and not really working on principles, we'll not get too far in this nation.
But you actually did not elaborate on the powers that he has. But Far Evis Tayong, is it also because of the fact that the Prime Minister is an Anglophone, where we have ministers who are from the region of the President of the Republic, this Anglophone divide, that maybe his powers are maybe undermined by some ministers?
Well, I will talk on that, and to remind the public that I am a member of the Cameroon Renaissance Movement. I'm an opposition. So if you like, you take a minister from my village and put here. You don't expect me to see his negative aspects and clap for you. It doesn't work like that. Because I see how they want to influence the way the program moves, for reasons that they wanted A or B to be there. It does not move like that. I am an opposition figure in this country, and once, what is the meaning of opposition? You hit hard on where the government is not making it well. That's my duty. So it's not because I put on this cap and you start thinking that it's on tribal lineage. I'm very vexed with that aspect. I should be honest to tell you that. This tells you that we are not yet matured in terms of appreciating programs that go on air like that. I was thinking that at the end of this, as you're asking the question, people should be able to look at the facts that we're touching and not on a person, because I don't think we came here on persons. Put even Minister Tata Jipo there. If he's doing wrong, I will tell him it's wrong. You put, I was among those who criticized Mr. Paul Tassom and the reconstruction issue. I attended the meeting in Buya, came back and took on air against him. So how do you look at it? So, at the long run, Mr. Liu, let's come back to the issue here at stake. Now, if you look at the issue with the Prime Minister, probably the quagmires left and right, we all understand. People should not hide it. You know that in Cameroon, there are some persons who have portfolios than the others, despite their ranks. You know that. When former PM Musonge was on board, there was a time that an Eric and a Nankonku was going on. Now, I don't want to call the names detailing for reasons best known to them, but we understand that there was a time when the students went there late. They're just a few minutes past 7 o'clock when they were supposed to be at 7. And information got to him, he gave instructions. What was the response of that director in that school? Say, Mwaki command is and the issue ended like that. We understand that when the Prime Minister, Peter Mufani Musonge, took up, the first few months, he was very active, visiting ministries in a surprise mode. I mean, surprising ministers to find out if they are there. And we understand that during that time, even till now, there are some directors and some directors who tell you that they work directly with the presidency. What grammar are people telling me here? That when we're talking about issues here, people want to maneuver. If PM is there, and we're talking about things that are not moving, it is our duty to make it as an eye-opener so that we could get a better Cameroon. That is how it's supposed to be. So, if we come back to the issue of Mr. Leo, concerning the issues revolving around governance, I keep telling people, there are ministers, there are directors, and there are different persons, category in government, who doesn't even follow the hierarchical representation as per se. You would be surprised that if you go to the general manager of Sonora during the days of Edin Bernard, his accountability was direct to the presidency and was not through the Minister of Water and Energy as expected. I don't know if Cameroonians are getting what I'm saying here. Then you have a particular department that by virtue is under a ministerial structure, but when it comes down to operations, that ministerial structure has no power over that subordinate that is under his tutelage ministry. And what are people telling me? These things are common, and we must call a spade a spade. If PM is there and he's not having what it takes to work, people should not carry be cajoling because we want to say that it is not where Samuel Bamenda. I am seeing him as a head of government. I am seeing him as my PM. That is how I see PM, Chief Dr. John Gute. There's no other way. So if our Prime Minister is not working or he's working and his hands are tied, I will not carry and be singing some because I want some mullah somewhere, or I want somebody from Jan to tell me that I'm staying here talking because bring former PM Yang here. I will tell him his own. That is the Cameroon we need to build today, Mr. Leo. I am saying this because I will vibrate on this frequency till the program goes to an end. For all those who think that they can put in place tribalistic tendencies when we're analyzing issues that are causing this country down, you cannot imagine.
Good evening to you, Mr. Leo and co. An Anglophone PM in Cameroon is just a figurehead and not the head of government. The PM is not to be held responsible for any mismanagement of COVID funds, but the presidency. Oben is writing from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Nice program and quality guest, Mr. Leo. I would suggest that you explain to the public that the topic of the day is not about the person, but the responsibility bestowed on him. If this is not well understood, it will give for tribalistic tendencies. I, for one, I don't think the Prime Minister has no portfolio, so cannot exert any influence on the resolutions of the crisis. Banji is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening to you all in the panel. I'm Ivanka from Limbe. Blame not the Prime Minister, for he is just a figurehead and he can equally not resign. Yes, but this issue of resignation, why are we particular with the Prime Minister? Almost everybody, yeah.
Mr. Liu, I think people are missing the point here. We have the President of the Republic, we have the Speaker of the House of Assembly, we have the Senate President, before we now have the Prime Minister. Let's get this clear. Now, I think the focus should be on the Parliament. the parliament has failed Cameroonians than the prime minister, because these ministers, they go through the parliament to debate, to present their balance sheet, and every parliamentary session we see ministers in front of the parliament. The members of parliament, we have members of parliament from the northwest, from the southwest region, from the east region, and all parts of Cameroon, and these members of parliament don't see the need to individually prop these ministers. I think when we look at other countries like Nigeria, ministers are brought before the parliament, not before the vice president, who will take over from the president or the second in command, but they are brought before the parliament for the parliament or the senate to look into their activities and say, hey, Mr. Minister, you are giving 200 million naira to do this, to do that. What did you do with that money? I expected the same scenario in Cameroon's parliament, but instead our parliament, our members of parliament who are beneficiaries of these ministries in terms of taking contracts and the rest, when ministers come in front of them, instead to prod them, they instead give them accolades and say, no, you acted well, you did this, you did that, you did that, you did that. So to me, the problem is not coming from the area of the prime minister. It is coming from the area of our parliament. When COVID-19 came, I was expecting an extraordinary session from the parliament to sit like any other nation, that they will sit and say, hey, this is what is happening. We'll call the prime minister now to come in front of the parliament and say, Mr. Prime Minister, there is COVID-19. What are your suggestions? What are the options on the table? What do we have as best possible options? And what do you think that this parliament can do or propose bills such that it can help you? At this level, the parliament was supposed to work in that light. Now, the prime minister, we all know, is the fourth person in Cameroon. The president, the president of the Senate, and we have the president of the Speaker of the House of Assembly before we now have the prime minister. And we are, as people are saying that the prime minister should resign, under what context? Under what basis? They don't know his scope of study, his scope in which he's working on. The truth is, we should evaluate the prime minister on what we know that prime ministers are supposed to do in Cameroon. Yes, I accept with fire that we should not look at this at the level of tribalistic basis, that because this person is from this region, this person is from this region. Generally, we should look at it in terms of the mission and the vision. The issue here in Cameroon is that our parliamentarians are making it difficult for the prime minister to carry out his function, because the parliamentarians have decided to stay mute and just go to the parliament and say, hey, Mr. Minister, you are doing well, this ministry is doing well, this ministry is doing well. Mbaku raised an issue like, say, okay, for example, we have the Minister of Health, Public Health, Malauda Malachi, and other ministers who are equally in this saga, caught in this saga. At the end of the day, what we're expecting is that the parliament, the June session, as they start inside this June session, COVID gate should be on the table. And the COVID gate being on the table, they are asking the ministers, even calling for the Secretary General of the presidency. People forget to understand that the president, the Secretary General of the presidency, play what we call a sublime role, even bigger than the prime minister, somehow in terms of how we see the functionality. Sometimes you see ministers are afraid of the Secretary General of the presidency than even the prime minister. At the end of the day, the parliament was supposed to call all these ministers within this June session and say, this number of money was given, this amount of money was given to you to handle this, what have you done with it? At the end of the day, when they do all their problem, now they say, okay, Mr. Prime Minister, what went wrong? So we should not judge the prime minister based on what we see on COVID and Anglophone crisis. Like I said, and I always say this, the Anglophone crisis started with young Philemon, and the prime minister inherited it, and he inherited the conflict. We're expecting that he will be a bit creative, which he will. Look at when he organized the major national dialogue, there was a follow-up on the major national dialogue. But however, it is not effective as many as who will say it to be. We expect that the House of Assembly now should come in, not just the prime minister.
Good evening, Mo. Mo writing from Yaoundé. I refuse the fact that people refer to the PM as just a figurehead. I think he is doing a great job. He is just unfortunately surrounded by corrupt minds. Resignation won't solve the issue. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leo, and all those on set. Your panel is doing a great job in analyzing the position of the PM. All those writing against the panel are part of the problem in Cameroon. They think they are more patriotic because they are hardened. Clappers, you guys are speaking truth to power. Elvis is writing from Leicester. Now, good evening to the panel. I see you are digressing from the topic. Stay on the topic. If not, then you are sentimental. Who sanctions ministers in cases of unruly behavior? Mr. Liu, the PM hasn't been given the full mandate to work according to his office. What is the position of the presidency in COVID money? Okay. Afar Valentine says, good evening, Mr. Liu. All the panelists are the best. Congratulations. Keep on the good work. Keep on. Dr. Nick is Galantine, writing from Kumba. Thank you, Valley. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and all Anglophone PM in Cameroon is a pen and paper head government, not a reality. Thomas Ayong in Mbisa, writing from Mbisa. Is the problem not also because, accordingly, let me take what this Stephen Mwambo has written, you react to him. Stephen Mwambo, writing from Boya, says, as per the question, the PM is not head of government. I explain. The Constitution stipulates that the head of state appoints the PM, and on the proposal of the PM, the president appoints the other ministers. Now, if the PM is appointed on the same day with his ministers, do you think he proposed those names to the head of state? The PM should be appointed and given, say, a week to compose the names of ministers and sent to the president. Secondly, we know ministers like Bilu Buba Maigari, who have remained ministers as compensation for peace with regards to the April 4th. How can the PM earn respect from such ministers? However, I stand by the fact that the PM should, Mambo thinks he should resign anytime his authority is undermined by any minister.
Yeah. I think I urgently to understand something. We are not here to push an agenda, one. Secondly, we are not talking out of emotions. We are looking at basic critical issues. So when people take their decision and say, okay, he is not head of government, I don't know whether it's their own, whether they are just feeling that they should talk, or that is actually what the law stipulates. The law says this man is this. He is the prime minister and the head of government. Now, when you say he does not have the power to execute something, are you just saying out of emotions and you want to be sober on him, or you actually interpreting what the constitution of this country says? I really think that the prime minister has, we always say each time we find ourselves in public platforms like this, that Cameroon has laws. People say they are good laws. I don't know how good they are. Laws that are crafted. You get to Article A, it is well designed, and Article B is manipulative, switching every other idea of Article A. And this is where we find ourselves. We have the Prime Minister who has been given the prerogative as a head of a government that he did not create. You are head of a government that you did not appoint somebody there. That's why I started by saying that a Prime Minister in a typical sense exists mostly. A Prime Minister, a head minister, a lead minister is the one that operates within the confines of other ministers. He is elected to appoint his cabinet and appoint his junior and do consultations maybe with the President of the Republic and appoint the junior minister, so that when there is a bullet coming, he is the one to shoot that bullet and say, okay, you, this Minister of Health, this is the Minister of Culture, or whatever, you have this issue. Okay, I'll absorb the issue. But when we are mixing up a monarchical system where people rule for donkey years, people stay at the helm of power and appoint their people to various positions, they don't follow the organigram of the state. That is the problem. Because in a system like this, we have a prime minister who was supposed to come to office. We are talking about accountability. We have a constitution to follow in this country. Well, let me bring to you a simple aspect of the constitution. Article 66 of this country, which has to do, if we're focusing on Article 66, we will not have the COVID gate, right? Article 66 says what? Declare your property before you get into office. If you have a prime minister that was elected and he has to follow the legal structure that is put forth by the constitution of this country, to say, okay, I am the prime minister, we have to follow the constitution. Let us have the asset of the president of the republic declared. Let us have my own assets declared. Let us have every minister under me, your assets declared. That is already a check mechanism to bar corruption, embezzlement, and all that. But he has been given a mandate, he has been given terms of reference, which he cannot even reach up to. So who do you blame? It's a double-sided effect. In as much, truly, people blame, some people, the attention will always be divided. But what does the law say? He is the head of government. He is to control that. So the bullet will fall on him, even if it's not. It is not only happening to Jongute. Like I said earlier, go and read what Jongute he was appointed in 2019. I'm sure January. He's just about 2 years or so. Go and check what the 10 years of young Philemon was. Young Philemon went through hell because people should not get emotional. It's not about Southwest. People should look at what these men who are appointed Anglophone. The office of a prime minister is not just for an Anglophone. I don't think that's what the constitution of this country say. It's not just for an Anglophone. There should not be rotating Anglophone between North and Southwest and making people, our audience to hit their head, quarreling between the Northwest and Southwest here. Yes. The office of the prime minister is for every Cameroonian. It's for every Cameroonian. They should begin to learn how to appoint prime ministers from the north, from the south, and rotate equally the president of the republic who could come from the north, from the west, southern Cameroons, or from the west Cameroons, or wherever. We should have this country rotating, not a group, a bourgeoisie, a group of bourgeoisians who have taken part and think that only a class, an age group can lead this country. That is where we are coming from with a lot of this kind of crisis.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Leo. We should stop blaming the PM because we all know that he doesn't have any say in the country. It's Janet writing from Bafusam. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please, which parliament is he talking about? Is it the CPDM or which? Please, let him forget about the parliament of Cameroon. He should stop comparing between Nigeria parliament and Cameroon. They are two different things. Ben 2 is writing from Limbed. Good evening, it's Valerie from Bamenda. I think the PM is just there because I see that they are ministers who will not respect his power. Okay. Hello, Mr. Leo. I'm Sir Clinton from the United States of America. The Prime Minister should take part of the blame because he is the head of government. If anyone says he shouldn't be held responsible, can he or she provide facts to show that he has limited powers? If he had limited powers, he would have resigned and go on air to tell the public his hands are tied. Okay, yeah. Mr. Leo, the panel is diverting the topic. The topic is an Anglophone PM in Cameroon really head of government, and not is Dion Guti really the head of government. Thanks. Binui is writing from Moi. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and all the great panelists. Wish to enjoy the program, but no electricity in Kumba. Okay, good evening to you too. Hello, I'm Delphine from Belgium. For me, the PM is just a name because it's not carrying out its functions, but the Prime Minister is doing so much work. Yeah. Good evening to you all in the platform. See, my answer is no. The government is a kangaroo government. Simon is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Leo. You know, it's always said, show me your friends and I will tell you who you are. The Prime Minister, I am sure, knows the ills and the evils going on before he assumed that position. Since he joined them, he should be held responsible. Is resigning when your hands are tied a taboo? Why should you still occupy the position of Prime Minister when you know there are some ministers who won't respect you? Okay. We are soon going to be getting some reactions from Sama, all the way from Boya. We hope the technicians work on that. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and the panel. In paper he is, but in action is not. Indeed, I don't think the PM of Cameroon is head of government. How can the head of government that he did not constitute? Unlike the UK, the PM is elected and he constitutes a government and takes responsibility for the government. Chiri is writing from Boya. Good evening. Good program, Leo, but for detractors who want to distract your guest with tribalistic lines, I, however, trust the sound judgment of someone like Far Elvis, who gives it just the way he sees it. In Cameroon, we believe in divide and rule, just as what is happening now. As for the PM, I see him as the first minister to be called up, and the rest of the ministers follow without his consent. So it's no different. Okay? Walters is writing from Yaoundé, but is that where the problem lies? That is, there is need to appoint a prime minister because seemingly the focus is not essentially on PMT. We're talking about an Anglophone Prime Minister. Is the issue also with appointing the Prime Minister and then giving him that latitude to form his government so that he takes responsibility over those he appoints or he proposed to the President of the Republic?
I think it's not proper. It probably would be great, that you just call someone from the streets overnight. Okay, you're Prime Minister. Then in 2 days' time, he comes up with a full government.
Why not give him, say, a month?
No, I mean the truth about it. Even if you gave him a year, he has to work with the presidency and all the other people to pick the people. But he stands ahead and says, "This is my government." You understand what I mean? But we know that the presidency and everyone else has been in cooking that soup, so that the man actually has power, and so that the people who are appointed actually respect him. But you will see that, like I was saying on some forum, it comes back to basic education and so on. You see that when Prime Minister Yang when he was Prime Minister, Minister Atanganji did not have any respect for him. Madam Tutumuna did not have any respect for him, and some others, they didn't have any respect for him, because the problem started to boil, and Prime Minister Philemon Yang was at Ayaba trying to consult with people, and then Minister Atanganji gathered some other ministers, 5 of them. They sat at CRTV and told him off. So people should not blame when the ministers themselves, when they behave like what do you want the public to do? And then when our current Prime Minister started to solve the Anglophone problem, I mean, there was this euphoria. Then he says everything will be on table except for separation. Everything people understood that, okay, federation will be discussed. But another minister went to, the same minister went to France, RFE, and then told everybody off, and nothing happened, and what he said came to pass. So you will see that, in fact, would have loved to see Minister Atanganji as the Prime Minister, so to see whether this formula of being appointed without power is true, or is it a personal thing or something like that. There's something there that we don't seem to get, except you try to explain to me.
Yeah, but then I don't know how wise that statement was, but yes. But does the Prime Minister? Do you have the impression that he makes some proposals on those to be in the government, the way things operate?
Yes, obviously, Mr. Leo, the Prime Minister makes proposals.
And they are appointed the same day?
No, not necessarily the same day.
Okay. Consulted.
You make proposals and leave it. It is at the prerogative of the head of state to take the proposals or to leave it. Now, Mr. Leo, what we are missing the issue here is, we talk about an Anglophone PM. If you look at Abbas Sado, the one-time PM, he was not from Northwest Southwest. He was from the northern region of the country. That's French speaking.
No, Ayatu.
Ayatu. Thank you. Sadu Ayatu. Now you look at it that he did his own, even though he was the Prime Minister who had the shortest term in office so far before his issue started revolving from Northwest, Southwest, and other like. Now, look at it, Mr. Leo. Tal Jarvis tells us, no, don't blame Prime Minister, blame the National President. It's a lie. It will not go. We will not play ping-pong game here. Head of government takes the blame for things that are not moving well. Mr. Leo, let me ask you this question. Look at the period of when Peter Bafani Musonge was PM. Were you to tell him what to do before he could get up every morning and visit ministries? Mr. Leo, his early tenure in office, ministers were at work because he had what they call surprise visit to various ministries. You will tell me you need presidency to give you that kind of visa before you go? Get up in the morning to go and see whether Minister A or Mr. B is in his office or not? It was functional. If Peter Bafani Musonge could do that. Now, Mr. Leo, look at it. We're talking about hate speech. How do you explain that PM comes to Boya? A chief is noted for hate speech, and even getting people and beating and telling will give them 2 hours or the like to leave. And you come there at Mountain Hotel, you talk with a man in a convivial manner, and the chapter goes on notice. Do you need clearance from the head of state to punish that kind of chief as a PM? To hear the table that no, this thing will not move like that. This is divide and rule. Cameroon is one and indivisible. For this reason, this is your punishment. What are we saying here? I am surprised and shocked. if I see people taking that kind of line, if something is not right from our government officials, we need to say it, Mr. Leo. Because our role is to pinpoint things that are not right for us as opposition, while media people like Mbaku Jude and a handful of youths is to work on facts. But I think that if I tell you that if the PM came to Boya, cajoled the chief, I tell you I'm happy, I'm not happy. I don't think it's the head of state who told me that cajoled that man. Because that minister could, the PM could equally take a firm instruction, even from Yaoundé. If I see any of your videos or this, talking about hate speech, nowhere sideways, when we're talking about one indivisible, it will hold Mr. Leo. I don't think President Biya will tell him, no, it's an error, leave it like that. So, people must take their individual responsibility, Mr. Leo. You go to the field, look at what we're talking about. Shan just passed. And Cameroon Resistance Movement was talking about the abnormalities and the need for accountability. That a tip of sand is costing 700,000 francs. Mr. Leo, do you need, as a PM, to take line from presidency, to call Minister of Sport and all the stakeholders to produce to you within 48 hours the accountability on how they manage that those projects during the Shan? You don't need a president, Mr. Leo. So if people are not working and we are calling them to order, people should understand that it's because we want people to work. This one, you don't need to go and meet a magician or sit at the president and say, please, excuse me, I want to ask this person to come out. No, you are the head of government. You call the Minister of Sport. You call the contracting companies concerned. You give them 48 hours delay to get to your office and give you details on how they spend that money. If we're working like this, Mr. Leo, I think even the head of state would have been happy because we would have not been talking about borrowing more money to put in the various stadiums across the country. So at the end of it, if there is a lapse somewhere along the line, we should be able to call a spade a spade. Our PM has not been very, very apt in the follow-up of the COVID-19. So he should call a spade a spade.
Yeah, but that's the focus now is...
And the government and Congress will back him up.
Yeah, but it's not COVID-19, no? Yeah, and before PM, yes.
Let me answer.
Generally,
yes,
because what we are discussing would also involve PM Yang, it will involve Achidachu, all of them.
Peter Mofani. Let me say something. You see, these are the facts. The Prime Minister of this country is an appointed minister. He's appointed by the head of state. And they communicate that the press release that does this is signed by the President of the Republic, Paul Biya. The other ministers are appointed by President Paul Biya, and their press release assigned presidential stuff assigned by the President of the Republic, Paul Biya. That is where the problem is. You understand? That is where the problem is. Prime Minister is supposed to be appointed. In the case of an appointed Prime Minister like what we have in Cameroon, because other countries have different democratic setup. In Britain, we have Prime Ministers that are elected. Most of the time they are elected in the House of Commons and the majority party. The party of the majority, yes. In Israel, it happens. In Pakistan, in Pakistan, it is the same thing. So, what is happening with us who borrow ideas, who borrow offices from the whites, and don't know how to implement it? Prime Minister, in Anglophone Prime Minister, so whoever is Prime Minister in this country, is supposed to be okay. If you are to be appointed by the head of state, good. The presidential decree comes out, you are appointed. Now the presidential decrees that appoint ministers is supposed to be signed by that prime minister because he is the head of that government, and that is this hierarchical setup that is supposed to be followed. But when it's not followed like that, that's where we have the mismatch, and people are misinterpreting what we are saying here. We are placing facts side by side, what should be and what is actually happening. We are not talking because we want to run down somebody or in a particular era. Like I said earlier, the successive prime ministers who have come into office and have gone have not had enough powers. I don't expect a prime minister to come and sit on this panel and say that I don't have powers. We are to speak. You Cameroonians need to be. This is what is killing Cameroonians. We need to be flexible. We need to be dynamic in the mindset. We need to help this country grow, and helping this country grow is thinking best possible solutions to the crisis we face today.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Leonard. The Prime Minister in Cameroon is they're okay to do public work. He has no power since he is unable to take decisions. Mr. Anta Rogers is writing from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Leo. What is the role of the Prime Minister? Did he exercise his role or not? If you are a team leader and your team fails, then you fail. The PM should sanction his team members. If not, then he should resign. Can the Prime Minister actually sanction the minister in Cameroon?
The problem here that I'm sure even those who are asking or bringing in tribal sentimental issues, they seem not to even understand the presidential system or the system of governance in Cameroon, because Cameroon is a rough melange of the French system, the Anglo-Saxon system, they borrowed on this existing system. Because if you look at it from this perspective, you see that we look at the senatorial level, we have appointed senators and elected senators in some part of the country, borrow from France and part from Britain, you melange. And the same thing applies to the issue of prime ministry in Cameroon. No prime minister and no minister has any legal responsibility, is not accountable to Cameroonians. What we see in Cameroon, the prime minister is not accountable to an ordinary Cameroonian. They're just the truth. The people the prime minister is accountable only to the head of state and his regime. In Cameroon, if we look at the reality, the truth is, who elected the prime minister? No, you did not elect the prime minister. I did not elect the prime minister. He's not accountable to me. And we cannot hold him accountable because we don't have that legality. But we have the legality to hold the members of the House of Assembly. We have the legality to hold our mayors. We have the legality to hold the head of state, because the head of state has our mandate. We gave him our mandate. So the essence is that we should push in Cameroon for a system which should give the prime minister the opportunity to be elected even within the same parliament that people say they still don't trust it. At least at that level, there's a certain level of power transferred to the prime minister, where the prime minister knows that his authority or her authority comes from the parliament. Look at what happened in Israel just yesterday. The prime minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who has been for 12 years, was ousted based on parliamentary vote where he could not succeed. He could not succeed to win over 60. He was ousted over a vote. He had 59, and we had Bennett, who had 60. So the issue there is that if the prime minister mandate or power is coming within an elective body, like let's say the parliament, as we see in UK, where the House of Commons sit and elect the prime minister, it gives that prime minister the power to say, hey, I can appoint this minister, I cannot appoint this minister, I can be responsible to this minister, I cannot be responsible. But the challenge that we have is that when the president appoints a prime minister, the president, as Baku said, sign a decree and appoint a minister. There is a cliche that goes within those who work within the ministries, that an appointed prime minister has nothing to do with an appointed SDO, because all of them are appointed at the level of presidential decree. What's the difference? So the challenge is like selling a rope and having the rope, pulling the rope. I expect the person who bought the goat to go, and you are pulling the rope. So what we expect is that we should clamor for powers to be given to the prime minister in Cameroon, because the prime minister in Cameroon don't have that powers. We say the prime minister is the head of government. Which head of which government? By text, there's no degree of application or text of application. Where is the text of application that says, okay, if you ask an ordinary Cameroonian, what are the duties and responsibilities of a prime minister? But go to the Cameroon constitution, and we could see that for the president. We could see how a president is elected. What are the responsibilities of the president? You ask that, sometimes we don't even know. You just see the prime minister run this, run that, run that. The prime ministry position in Cameroon has been limited to 4 key areas. 1, commissions. 2, visit. 3, consultative talk. And 4, just to save the purpose that Cameroon has a head of government. You cannot judge a prime minister based on Cameroon context. No prime minister can be judged based on Cameroon context in terms of effectiveness, because it will not go. If you want to judge a prime minister, the challenge that we are facing is that we are looking at other countries and comparing our prime minister position with other countries, but we fail to understand that they don't have that equal synergy, the equal powers. They don't have it. In UK, the House of Commons elect the prime minister. The prime minister appoints or have a right to sack the minister.
Yeah, but no. Why is the prime minister, even if we were to go back to COVID, why is the prime minister even judged when we know that auditions are still going on? Why are some people so interested in what the prime minister has done when investigations are going on? That only for him and not for others?
Well, that's a tricky one again. We are going to these tricky, slippery grounds.
Yeah, because almost everybody is involved in this, and we know that
people
even
are
before
positioning themselves for transition, possible transition, and they are fighting him.
It's possible. It's just so unfortunate. Like I said, a lot of things are falling on the head of the current prime minister. It's just unfortunate. That's all we can say. And the only thing that saves a man, forget about position. Even if you are a truck pusher in a park, a taximan, whatever, the only thing that saves you is truth. That's the only thing that saves you is truth. And if you can learn to make the truth work for you in the morning, in the afternoon, and evening, no matter what position you hold, that truth will always see you through. That's the bottom line. And if at any material moment you compromise that truth, then you're going to have a problem. Because if there was an issue, a national issue, that the prime minister dealt with at any point but did not go for truth, this time around, truth will, nature knows how to teach us some lessons so that we can begin to respect it. So now when fire and heat starts falling on our current prime minister, he will say, no, the truth is this. So when you begin to feel the heat, that's when you know how to respect truth. And if we are respecting truth in this country, there will be no Anglophone war, there will be no violence, there will be nothing. We have not respected truth in this country. And therefore, when you don't respect truth, it doesn't matter who you are, even if you are the president, nature is going to set up an experiment for you to discover truth.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The fact that the PM and ministers are appointed doesn't hinder him from taking his responsibility as head of government. If Atanga Njowu is just a minister, can impose himself and have respect, why can't the head of government? The charisma of each PM determines the respect to get. Divine, writing from Yaoundé, good evening to you. Divine. Gobi, writing from Boya, says, Mr. Liu, I want any Cameroonian to tell me the criteria the head of state use to appoint his ministers, because we have seen persons move from one ministry to another where these people born ministers. Tell us. Okay, please. This one says, good evening to all of you there, a doctor and other panelists alike. Critical analysis, no matter what others are saying, based on sentiments and emotions. And this is why this country is moving backward. An Anglophone PM theoretically is the head of government, but practically he is not based on the confused system in place, which is benefiting some few individuals. Kingsley is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The Prime Minister is just a name given to the person considered by the Constitution as head of government, but doesn't have the right to exercise his functions as the Prime Minister. Is Daniel Rees writing from Abomenda. Good evening. Good evening to you and your crew on board. Mr. Liu, the PM has no decision to the appointment of ministers, because when we look at the present ministers, some of them have been there for as long as God knows. Most of them are just shuffled from one ministerial post to another. So the PM is not actually the head of our government. He is the head of government. Alan is writing from Limbe. Janice from Douala says, good evening, Mr. Liu. We are ungrateful in Africa. The good works of our leaders are not talked about, but their mistakes and failures are made news. If we are placed in their positions, this country will be worse than what we have. Good evening to you, Janice. I think you're right, yeah. Good evening, Mr. Liu. It's really a sad situation that Cameroon government is using the position to blindfold Anglophones. Yes. Andy is writing from Cyprus. Good evening to you all. Mr. Liu, tell your panelists not to be distracted or moved by what the immature minds say. The present Prime Minister is not the only English Prime Minister that the English-speaking Cameroonians have been talking against. Former Prime Minister Philemon Yang was described as a dormant, fearful, and especially the people of the Northwest. Was he not from the Northwest? Your panelists should air their minds to the fullest. Emelda is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Liu, watching from Bamenda. Okay, you say there's no electricity. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I am a fervent fan of your program. Please always give enough time to the kangaroo man to express himself because he has a lot to offer. I'm Anu Fedin. I'm writing from Bonaberi. The kangaroo man, you have been expressing yourself. Okay. Finzi writing from, I'm sure, Limbe says, ask the kangaroo man to tell me about COVID money of the MRC. I'm sure we are going to organize a debate. We are going to organize a debate on that. That's a different one. That Mr. Liu, your panelists are mixing up systems of government. Let them focus on the role of the PM in a semi-presidential system of Cameroon. The constitution stipulates the role of the government, but the president doesn't respect that law. So the role of undermining of the PM's role starts with the president. You think so? Stephen Mwambo thinks that Mr. Liu, your panelists are mixing up systems of government. Let them focus on the role of the PM in a semi-presidential system of Cameroon. The constitution stipulates the role of the government, but the president doesn't respect that law. So the role or undermining of the PM's role starts with the president.
The main issue is that, Mr. Liu, when it comes to comparative analysis, there's no way you can pinpoint an aspect without carrying on with comparative studies. Because it is comparative studies that gives you a little way to understand better what we're talking about. And so I think Cameroon is not an island that we could talk about the system without taking cognizance of other systems where the prime minister's position is supposed to function the way it's supposed to be. But at the long run of it, I think that the aspect of saying probably the head of state not respecting the position of the prime minister and other like, I think it's not really where we are because everything works in line with the constitution. Now, if you have a bad constitution, it gives you bad results. Now, if it gives you bad results, my worry here is that, Mr. Leo, there are some minor things that even if they say you don't have power as a principal or probably as a vice principal in a school, but there are some things that you can take upon yourself like discipline. If you are a vice principal in a school, you cannot tell me that if teachers keep coming late, probably because the principal is too busy to attend to that, you will not attend to it because you feel that it is only the principal who must attend to those teachers and students who are coming late to school. No. What I'm saying here is that there are some steps that if you want to move above. Now, I got a panelist who responded some few minutes ago on your text, like he does not know why we keep taking on people only on when they are wrong. No. When the PM started move in the Northwest and the Southwest, in this very panel, here, this very TV, Amita Prime, I think we were standing tall as appreciating because even when he went to Bamia on a ghost town day, the population that came out, no minister has been able to attend to that record. Other PMs have been able to case themselves on ghost towns only at the Yaba Hotel. This platform here spoke about that and appreciated that. When he went to Southwest, there was a mammoth crowd that came out. True. And we saw him closer to the people, even touching the people and greeting them, marking women, talking to them and listening to them. I think that if another error comes in, we will not stay and be appreciating because Napoleon is doing what Napoleon left undone. No, that's the error people are saying here. But in a nutshell, the position of the PM, Mr. Liu, whether it's Philemon Yang or whosoever, my point here is that in as much as it is clear that they have limited powers, but it does not stop them from calling a spade a spade. Mr. Liu, what will cause a PM to create history? By giving ultimatum. Those who are involved in Project A, D, Yaoundé, Douala, stage of this and that, you have 2 weeks or 48 hours to produce me results of what you have done so far before you go for the next disbursement. What would it cost you? Okay. But if you stay aloof and things go wrong, and then you start saying that people start defending you because PM is not even defending what people are defending. So people have now become his advocates, and they are turning to give us the impression that no, he's not. No. In real case, Mr. Leo, look at let's come back to Douala, Mr. Leo. Go to Douala 3. Out of a recent, the GO of Douala 3 had banned the circulation of heavy duty trucks into Douala 3. SGO followed suit. You know what happened with that? The whole thing has died a natural death. Why? It has been violated and now the vehicles are applied. Why was that? Because those vehicles were causing accidents or presenting accidents during the day with the population unlike in Douala. Now if you are PM, a GO gives an instruction, is overruled by another hierarchy subordinate to you. Do you need to consult the presidency to call a spade and say, I am reinforcing that order for the sake of the lives of people in Douala 3?
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. If I'm appointed in this government as the Prime Minister of this country, I will not accept because it's post that has no power practically. Papa Oyuyu is writing from Douala. Good evening to you, Mr. Liu. I'm Killian from Boya. The truth is that the PM is head of government in paper and not head of government. He's just there as an isolated figure and to fulfill the constitution of which, okay, no, the Prime Minister has been doing much work out here in the nation. Good evening, Mr. Liu. This is for you, Baku. I'll read this and you react. Good evening, Mr. Liu, and to the panelists. I haven't heard any minister in Cameroon say that as instructed by the head of government, but always say as instructed by the head of state. So it is clear that the Prime Minister's position in Cameroon has little or no power over ministers. That's the position Mr. Tanganji said that Anglophones are occupying the highest positions in Cameroon, which today we are facing the consequences because he helped to escalate the crisis. Okay. Yes, almost everybody is saying that with high instructions from the President of the Republic. No?
Yeah, we thank the head of state. Even us sitting here, it's a cliche now in the country, and everyone, even children, know how to rightly put it. You see, that's why I said earlier that the person who signs that signature to appoint ministers, okay, even if it is the presidency that had chosen these ministers, let it be the Prime Minister who visas that, okay, I am the leading authority here. Okay, it is under my signature that you people are coming into office, and anything that happens to you people, I take the bullet for it. Okay, he stands proxy for all his ministers. But that is not. We are not saying these things because we are saying these things logically. They are well written and outlined. Javis was talking about the constitution, if it actually outlines the role of the Prime Minister. We have countries that have clearly stated out the role, because most of these Prime Minister things happen in monarchies. Prime Ministers are mostly in monarchical systems. In monarchical systems, we usually have parliamentary setup where they are voted, because the monarch sits in his or her palace, like the Queen of England and usually was in France. We are inheriting this from France. They sit there, they don't go out, they don't do this work. It is a Prime Minister who is actually acting on behalf, like the president of that country. So they are voted in Parliament. Now, when we adopt such a system of governance, we must be able to contextualize it and understand where it's coming from. Now, in the parliamentary setup, like what we have in neighboring Nigeria, we have a vice president who runs concurrently with the president, with the head of state. They sit together and put their heads together and say, this is the person we are choosing for this. And if something goes wrong, both of them are held accountable. But like you rightly put it, who holds John Gute if Minister whoever is not working? John Gute is not responsible. He did not appoint any minister. His signature did not appoint any minister. So how do we reconcile? We are saying this because we need a constitutional review. The country needs a constitutional review that we can begin to ascertain the offices. We have duplicated offices like this in this country, where people's roles are mixed up. We're even talking about parliament. We have a parliament and a senate that have the same function as a national and a regional assembly that has the same function as a mayor and his councillor. That has people are just instead of fixing a problem, they are bringing in some appeasing offices to mix up the whole structure. So in totality, for us to get out of this problem, first, this is what I'm saying. The office of Prime Minister is not exclusively for Anglophones. Let us widen this notion. If because Pobia came into power and then within a certain space of time, the country was just like that without a Prime Minister. Multipartism came and ushered in a Prime Minister, and he felt that, okay, Anglophones should come to power. And after some time, you did not see that other people, other groups of persons, and even his own tribe, he have to rotate office. This is time that we're supposed to be putting our eyes clear to say, okay, Anglophones right in this country is not only Prime Minister. And Anglophone is not only supposed to be Prime Minister and head of government. Let this thing be going around every other part of the country. Secondly, let's go back to this constitution of this country and fix who is who. Okay. If the Prime Minister is representing the head of state, if the Prime Minister is representing the head of state in this country, or is the head of the government in this country. He is the second authority of this country. Let us not begin to squeeze issues and then begin to make as if we don't know the truth.
Second authority, okay.
Let us make the constitution. The prime minister signs, even if President Pobia is to appoint, let the prime minister's authority be stamped on the communique that appoints ministers in his regime. He is the one, he is the authority that appoints those ministers. It is not the president to appoint ministers to work with the prime minister, because who now sanctions who?
Okay, good things. The head of government should be given the rights and the privilege to appoint and dismiss all his ministers so that he will be respected and afraid of. That's what Machiavelli is writing from Yaoundé.
Yeah, I said that, yeah, that the issue is that Cameroonians are mixing. They're mixing because they feel like if you see the prime minister, you compare the prime minister set up like in UK, where the prime minister can dismiss the minister and can say, hey, this is it. But when we look at the setup in Cameroon, I think it's kind of different. I buy the idea of Baku. We need a constitutional review to see where, so that we can give, the constitution can delegate powers to the prime minister in such a way that a prime minister, whoever it is, an Anglophone or not an Anglophone, can still take the authority and do what is necessary. I remember, if we look at what is happening, even if you bring somebody from East region, the same situation will occur, where you will have the same situation where powers are limited. The next time maybe we'll have, is it a Francophone minister, prime minister, power limited. The next time we have the same system operating. The thing is, we need a constitutional review where prime minister, the authority of the prime minister, comes from the parliament, an elective body. The elective body gives their powers now to a prime minister. If we don't even want that, what if we say the president, a review where a president nominates a prime minister, and that prime minister passed through a senatorial committee, where the senatorial committee do a scrutiny of this prime minister, sit with this prime minister and question this prime minister and vote to accept this prime minister or not, as we have in other countries. By that, for the other ministers will see that, hey, this guy has powers, this guy can do this guy cannot do this. But in a system where you see that it is a semi-presidential system where everything is firm instruction. I'm happy that last time at least I heard Minister Paul Atangaji acknowledging the prime minister. He said, president of government. At least I was happy, because when we talk about the president of government, I was seeing the prime minister in that regard. So I was seeing the prime minister, because he was talking in the context of COVID, and the prime minister was the driving force of COVID, and the prime minister is in charge of COVID. So I was happy to see that he is respecting the prime minister and saying that, okay, it's coming now on these instructions from the prime minister, such that we can do this, do that. In review, in context, what we see in Cameroon is that from top, the president, the speaker of the assembly, the president of Senate, these are the people who are accountable to Cameroonians. People are afraid. You ask a question to Dr. Nida, why is it that people look at the prime minister? Is it that the prime minister is a soft target? The simple reason is that, Mr. Leo, there is a kind of people are envisioning, are looking at transition in future. So, and when you are looking at transition in future, you see that the prime minister could be a better choice of. So why not? Pushing the agenda to do this, do that, to sabotage him, because there's that possibility of transition. He has the qualities that it takes, and maybe we are looking for Anglophone to become a president.
Is that not where the trick is?
Yes.
Because seemingly many persons have written to say that there is a cabal that is trying to
run him down because of a possible transition.
To run the prime minister down and paint him black, because from every indications, I've seen many studies that were conducted indicating that if there was anybody
of that quality,
anybody suitable to take over the president of the republic, it may be an Anglophone and suitably PM Dion. And from everywhere, they're struggling to fight him and paint him black.
Oh, really? We're not aware of
these other facts. So if that's what is happening, then that's okay, we wish him well, but that doesn't stop us from saying that the prime minister does not have powers now, because we are dealing with a specific subject, and what we are doing now is great, so that if he becomes the president, he should know where to pay attention, and not because we cannot continue like this.
Okay, yes. Do you also think that there's a cabal against him?
Well, I don't have evidence on that. I should be honest with you, but I'm looking at it that this statement, if someone says PM should resign, why is it that the PM should resign? Is it because the head of government?
Is it because the COVID gate itself, the Shan itself, those things transpired within his reign? No, obviously.
He met Shan.
Yeah.
He met Kanda. The project was
the project was not his.
Yes,
the project was piloted from the presidency.
Aftermath. Mr. Leo, if I get into an office today and my predecessor had put a project in place and I come in and it's been executed during my tenure of office, Mr. Leo, it's not my project. And Mr. Leo is continuous.
The CAN project was managed from
the presidency.
No, that's what I'm saying, that Mr. Leo. It was managed from the presidency. You even get a good face with the president when you even call his attention. Because that's the importance of working with the boss. Boss, the way I'm looking at it, I feel that, check something, I've been able to realize that there's some irregularities around the supply of sand and the overbilling and all the like. You don't sit, Mr. Leo, your boss, you are not supposed to be afraid of your boss.
Okay,
you're supposed to be talking with their boss.
You should take initiatives.
You take initiative, and it's from there that the boss knows that no, I have somebody who understands what he's supposed to do. We're talking about the issues of PM here, Mr. Leo. I'm saying there's some minor issues that the PM is supposed to initiate. Okay. If I tell you about his speech, you don't need to meet a soothsayer to tell you that a PM is hitting his table as the head of government. Anytime I hear this hate speech, from here, this is the action I'm taking. Or that vehicles are getting to Douala during the day and they're causing enormous death. I am giving this one, okay, now, I'm signing now a prime ministerial order which will override even the prefectorial order and all the like, and it holds. You don't need, it's not everything we say, head of state, head of state, head of state. This is where my problem is with the PM. Okay. That is where my trouble lies. Okay. Yes.
We are unfortunately going to end at this juncture. We want to say thank you, Dr. Nick, for coming.
Thank you very much. There are lots of problems in the country, and like you and I will always keep looking in our crystal ball. As you see, there are so many problems, and we can't really handle them. Others were already talking about constitutional revision, do this, do this, do this, and we know that a true dialogue is coming. We know that there's reconciliation. We know that there would be unity in the nation, and we know that 350 political parties are going to die, including MRC or Mr. Fatai over here. And we have the progressive CPDM coming on, and then all these political parties, the SDF, MRC, Cabral Libri, you form only one party.
That's what you think.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you very much. Of course, I know that the COVID gate is getting hot and the visa restriction is getting hot. I know that the kangaroo system is getting more and more confused. But just borrow some of our expertise. Just borrow. We'll be able to help you out, because where you are now, if you don't sit up, the days ahead are not too good. Greetings to Pa Azefo and Tifu Juan, all in Limbe. The days ahead are pregnant for Yaoundé regime. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas Jarvis, for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. I want to say that it's been a good debate. We should keep aside regional issues and we should focus on the issues that matter. I believe that Cameroon is for Cameroonians. We all shall die. Cameroon will remain Cameroon.
Okay. And to you, Mbaku, thank you for coming.
It was a pleasure, Leo. Someone once said, to fight for an African, you must be ready to fight too against that same African. And it's the same thing I'm putting out to Cameroonians, that we need to fight for good structures in the country, good institutions. I think if Cameroon is good, all of us are going to enjoy.
Okay, we want to thank the production team and to all of you who took time off to watch the program this evening. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Embrace its academic and professional reputation that has trained over 15,000 professionals in 10 years. Embrace HITMAT's numerous professional programs from HND to BTech, BSc, and MBA in the schools of Business and Management Sciences, Engineering and Technology, and the School of Transport and Logistics. Embrace HITMAT's professionalism, excellence, and consistency with solid mentorship from the University of Bamenda and the University of Boya. Embrace HITMAT's skills, development, expertise, and career orientation via workshops and academic field trips. Be part of the HITMAT family. Visit our Boya campus at Checkpoint Moliko and Douala campus at Carrefour Yoro, Jos, Monamusali. Contact 683-70-1720. UNRULY, the Higher Institute of Business Management and Technology, the University Institute for Professionals.